Howdy again. Thanks for coming back. And this is going to be the third video in a series of experiences I had, amazing experiences when I was a medical student working in Dr. Alan Barber's medical clinic at Stanford. That was a kind of a thick chart place where people often came who had medical complaints, pain, dizziness, fatigue, backache, headache, whatever, that people couldn't find a medical diagnosis for. So as a last resort, they'd go to Stanford because they heard that Dr. Barber could often find out, what's wrong with someone and cure them when no one else could. Well, one day I used to love working in his clinic. I just adored the man, and I learned a tremendous amount from him. And every patient was a fantastic adventure. One day I went and they told me, or Dr. Barber said, that I was going to see a man who was going to be the first kind of open heart surgery patient at Stanford. They had just developed this cardiac bypass surgery. It was an experimental procedure for people with intractable angina. In other words, chest pain, severe chest pain that didn't respond to medications, and so then they were going to go in and see if they could transplant some of his heart vessels and give him more circulation. And at the time, it was a new procedure. No one knew for sure, if it would work or if it would be effective. And but anyway, he was my patient, and I was working him up for this chest pain, and he was a mailman, and he told me that he was very sad because he couldn't work as a mailman because of this intractable chest pain. And then I had learned, from Dr. Barber to make not just medical questions. Of course, I listened to his heart and took his blood pressure and listened to his lungs and all of that. And it all actually sounded pretty good. But I remembered to ask more questions about the patient's life. That's what I learned from Dr. Barber. I can't remember what his name is. Let's just call him Jeremiah. I felt really close to him for some reason. I don't know why. But I asked him, I said, "Are there any issues going on in your life that you're upset about?" And he says, yeah, Doc, I think there are. And I said, "Well, can you tell me about it?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "Doc, my wife just bosses me around. She just treats me something terrible." And I don't remember what the details were, but I guess he was feeling like he was being constantly put down and ordered around and not treated with respect. And I said, "Well, it sounds like you're getting kind of bossed around and intimidated, and maybe sometimes you have to stick up for yourself a little bit, and maybe tell your wife you feel hurt and angry and maybe don't like being treated like that. Have you ever thought of that?" And he says, No, Doc. Would it be okay to do that? I said, "Yeah, you can do it in a loving way. Tell her that, and then come on back next week and then bring your medications with you," because I think he was taking like 25 pills a day for heart stuff. And then when he came back the next week, he said that he had talked to his wife, and his chest pain had suddenly vanished. And we had another expert in the clinic that day, was from the National Institute of Health, a cardiology research fellow, a brilliant guy. I won't mention his name, but his first name was Mark. And he was there, and so I presented the case to him, and he says that's peculiar because the guy is scheduled for surgery, in a couple of weeks, going to be a big event at Stanford. And I said, "Well, would you come and see him with me and see what you think?" because his chest pain disappeared, and Dr. Perlroth started looking through his chart at his X-ray, and he was kind of like one of these genius cardiology people, and he looked at his electrocardiogram and say they misread his electrocardiogram. They had read it as a indication that he'd had heart damage from a heart attack, and that was why they were going to give him this new surgery. And he said he's never had a heart attack. He had pericarditis, which is an inflammation of the tissues around the heart. And I said, well, look at all the pills he's taking. He had a bag half filled with bottles of pills. And Mark said, well, we could have a ceremony with him right now if he wants, and we could have him dump all of those pills into the trash can. So we did that, and his heart surgery was canceled, and they realized it had been a misdiagnosis. Again, he was just hurting. He had a heart problem, but it was, a broken heart because he wasn't feeling loved and respected. And I always felt so happy for him. But he never came back to the clinic. But I learned about 6 months later that one of his sons had tragically died in some gang incident or something like that, and there was going to be a funeral, and so I thought, well, maybe I should go to the funeral, and I asked them for permission. They said I could go to the funeral, and when we were sitting in the church, one of the ushers came up and said, Jeremiah needs you. He has extreme chest pain, and he's out in the lobby. And I went in and I said, what's up? He says, Doc, my chest pain came back. And I said, well, are you feeling grief for the loss of your son? He says, Doc, I really am. And I said, maybe you should just let the tears out. And then he grabbed me and just started sobbing. And then after that, he said, oh, Doc, my pain just disappeared again. So anyway, I mean, what's the moral of the story? It's that oftentimes your emotions can play a much bigger role in your life than you're aware, and can not only create, feelings of depression and anger and anxiety and loneliness and frustration and so forth, and life has bumps in the roads. But sometimes if you don't deal with your feelings, or if you don't deal with the relationships in your life, then those problems can manifest as physical aches and pains, or dizziness, or fatigue, or whatever. And the good news is, when you attend to those problems, often not only will you experience a tremendous change in your self-esteem and the way you feel emotionally, but often the way you feel physically as well. Because when you're in a state of joy, not only are you much less likely to be feeling physical pain, but you also get greater energy for exercise and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, that's my story. And if you are struggling with depression or anxiety or loneliness or somatic complaints or anything, and would like some help, take a ride on our Feeling Great app for free and see if you like it. And it might be helpful to you. Doesn't help everyone, but a lot of people get amazing relief quickly, just as I do sometimes when I'm working with people. And if you like it, you can buy a year subscription to it and have it available right in your pocket anytime you're upset, if it's going to help you change the way you think and feel. And if you like it and love it, but can't afford it, just contact us and we'll gladly give it to you for free. So anyway, that's my video for today. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Okay, bye-bye.